I was in my front yard watering my roses when I heard the unmistakable click of plastic against plastic. Before I could turn around, something pink and ridiculous snapped around my left wrist. I found myself staring at Patricia Holloway, the HOA president of Pine Ridge Estates, holding a pair of toy handcuffs she'd apparently bought from the dollar store. "Citizens arrest," she declared triumphantly, her voice carrying across the entire cul-de-sac. "You have refused to provide proper identification to the Homeowners Association Safety Committee, and I have reason to believe you're using a fake name. Nobody is actually named John Rivers." "That sounds made up." The 4 other HOA board members stood behind her, shifting uncomfortably. Tom Brennan, the treasurer, cleared his throat nervously. "Patricia, I don't think we can actually arrest people for not showing ID in their own yard." Patricia whipped around, her perfectly styled bob swinging dramatically. "The HOA bylaws clearly state that all residents must cooperate with neighborhood security initiatives. Article 12, subsection 4b. I sighed, setting down my watering can carefully. "Ma'am, I've lived here for 6 months. I pay my HOA dues on time. My lawn is exactly 2 3/4 inches tall, as specified in your 47-page landscaping guidelines. What exactly is the problem?" "The problem," she said, jabbing a manicured finger at me, "is that you're suspicious. You never attend meetings. Your mail delivery is irregular. And yesterday, I saw you receive a package with no return address." What Patricia didn't know was that my name really was John Rivers, at least for the purposes of this assignment. I'd been stationed in Pine Ridge Estates as part of an ongoing federal surveillance operation, using the cabin hidden in the woods behind my property as a base. My cover was simple: a boring early retiree who enjoyed gardening and kept to himself. The pink handcuffs were starting to chafe. "Patricia, I'm going to need you to remove these immediately." "Not until you show proper identification." She pulled out her phone. "I'm calling 911 to report a suspicious person who may be squatting in our neighborhood." I watched her dial, knowing this was about to get very interesting. You see, the local sheriff's department had specific instructions regarding any calls from my address or about my property. They were to immediately notify my handler at the Portland field office. "Yes, hello." Patricia spoke into her phone with the self-importance of someone who called 911 at least twice a month. "I need officers at 427 Maple Court immediately. I've detained a suspicious individual who refuses to identify himself." Behind Patricia, I noticed Margaret Chen, the HOA secretary, trying to distance herself from the situation. She whispered urgently to Tom, "This is going to end badly. Remember what happened when she tried to citizens arrest that Amazon driver?" Patricia hung up, looking pleased with herself. "The authorities will be here in 5 minutes. Then we'll see who you really are, Mr. Rivers, if that is your real name." I flexed my wrist in the plastic cuff. "Patricia, I'm giving you one last chance. Uncuff me now, and we can forget this happened." "Absolutely not. You probably have warrants. Or unpaid parking tickets. Or overdue library books." The sound of engines interrupted her rant. But instead of one patrol car, 4 black SUVs roared into our quiet cul-de-sac, their tires squealing as they surrounded us. Doors flew open, and men and women in dark suits emerged, moving with practiced efficiency. Patricia's face went from triumphant to confused. That's a lot of police for one suspicious person." A woman in a navy suit approached us, her expression stern. She pulled out a badge. "Special Agent Sarah Morrison, FBI, ma'am. You need to release Agent Rivers immediately." Patricia blinked. "Agent? FBI? But he's just a weird neighbor who grows too many tomatoes." "Ma'am," Agent Morrison's voice carried the kind of authority that made even Patricia step back, "you are currently restraining a federal agent and interfering with an ongoing operation. Remove those ridiculous handcuffs now, or I will arrest you for obstruction of justice." Patricia's hand shook as she fumbled for the tiny key. I didn't know. He never said he was FBI. This is all a misunderstanding." The cuffs finally came off, and I rubbed my wrist. Agent Morrison turned to me. Rivers, your cover's blown. We need to evacuate the site. Patricia's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Cover? Site? What site? I couldn't help myself. You know that ugly shed you keep complaining about in my backyard? The one you said was bringing down property values. She nodded mutely. It's not a shed. I gestured toward my backyard, where agents were already emerging from the tree line. It's the entrance to surveillance post Delta 7. As if on cue, what looked like an ordinary tool shed began to transform. Hidden hydraulics lifted a section of the ground, revealing a reinforced steel door marked with federal insignia. Agents streamed in and out, carrying equipment and hard drives. Tom Brennan's jaw dropped. That's been there the whole time? 5 years, I confirmed. Long before I moved in. We've been monitoring interstate drug trafficking through this region. Your neighborhood just happened to provide perfect cover. Patricia finally found her voice. But the HOA wasn't informed. This is a violation of our architectural review process. You can't just build secret FBI bases without submitting the proper forms. Agent Morrison looked at Patricia like she'd grown a second head. Ma'am, are you seriously trying to enforce HOA rules on a federal installation? Rules are rules, Patricia insisted, though her voice had lost its earlier conviction. If we let one person build unauthorized structures, where does it end? Next thing you know, everyone will want secret underground bases. Margaret Chen stepped forward. Patricia, please stop talking. You just handcuffed an FBI agent. The reality of the situation finally seemed to hit Patricia. Her face went pale. I didn't mean. I was just trying to keep the neighborhood safe. Agent Morrison pulled out a notebook. Ma'am, I need you to explain exactly why you thought you had the authority to detain a federal agent. Patricia straightened her shoulders, trying to reclaim some dignity. The HOA Safety Committee, which I chair, has been investigating Mr. Rivers for months. He never attends meetings. He gets strange deliveries. And Linda Parsons said she saw him talking into his sleeve once. I was pulling up my sleeves to garden, I interjected. It was hot. Agent Morrison continued writing. And you decided the appropriate response was to attempt a citizen's arrest with toy handcuffs? They're not toys. Patricia protested. They're HOA-approved temporary restraint devices. I bought them from a legitimate safety supply website. Tom Brennan coughed. Patricia, that was a Halloween costume website. We told you that at the last board meeting. More agents emerged from my house, carrying boxes of equipment. One of them approached Morrison. Ma'am, we've cleared the surveillance post. All sensitive materials secured. Local law enforcement is setting up a perimeter. Sure enough, actual police cars were now arriving, their officers looking somewhat embarrassed. I recognized Officer Dale, who'd responded to 3 of Patricia's previous 911 calls about suspicious activities that turned out to be things like me grilling after 6 p.m. or failing to bring my trash cans in within 30 minutes of collection. John, Officer Dale said, shaking his head. I mean, Agent Rivers. We got the alert from your office. Sorry about this. Patricia spun around. You knew? The police knew there was an FBI agent in our neighborhood and didn't tell the HOA board. Ma'am, Officer Dale said patiently, that's generally how undercover operations work. The undercover part means we don't announce it to the Homeowners Association. Agent Morrison finished writing and looked at Patricia. Mrs. Holloway, you're looking at potential federal charges for obstruction of justice, unlawful detention, and interfering with a federal investigation. At minimum, you disrupted a 5-year operation that was close to making significant arrests. Patricia's legs seemed to give out, and she sat heavily on my lawn, right on the grass she'd once given me a written warning about for having a single dandelion. Federal charges? But I'm on the school board. I organize the neighborhood watch. I can't go to federal prison. You should have thought of that before you decided to play cop, I said, perhaps enjoying this a bit too much. Maybe next time just wave hello like a normal neighbor. Margaret Chen and the other board members had backed away, clearly trying to distance themselves from their president. Tom Brennan raised his hand tentatively. For the record, we told her not to do this. There are emails. Traitors! Patricia shrieked from my lawn. I was protecting our property values. Agent Morrison motioned to Officer Dale. We'll need to take Mrs. Holloway in for questioning. The U.S. Attorney will decide what charges to file. As Officer Dale helped Patricia to her feet, she looked at me with tears in her eyes. All I wanted was to know your middle name for the neighborhood directory. It's classified, I said, which wasn't true, but seemed fitting given the circumstances. Patricia was led to a patrol car, still muttering about proper forms and architectural guidelines. The remaining HOA board members stood in a huddle, whispering frantically. Margaret approached me cautiously. Agent Rivers, on behalf of the Pine Ridge Estates Homeowners Association, I want to apologize for this incident. Also, do we need to retroactively approve your shed? I mean, your secret base. Agent Morrison answered for me. The federal government doesn't require HOA approval for classified installations. However, Agent Rivers will be relocating immediately, and the property will be sold. Oh, thank God, Tom Brennan muttered, then caught himself. I mean, we're sorry to see you go. I spent the next 2 hours watching agents dismantle 5 years of surveillance equipment while my former neighbors gathered at the end of the drive away, taking photos and live streaming the whole event. By evening, Pine Ridge Estates was trending on social media as the neighborhood that arrested the FBI. 3 weeks later, I got a call from Agent Morrison while settling into my new assignment in Arizona. Thought you'd want to know, she said. Patricia Holloway just pled guilty to federal obstruction charges. She got 2 years probation, $50,000 in fines, and 300 hours of community service. Let me guess, I said. She's also been removed from the HOA board? Unanimously voted out in an emergency session. Apparently, she showed up to the meeting with a binder labeled Evidence of FBI Architectural Violations and tried to countersue the federal government for unauthorized landscaping modifications. I laughed. How'd that go? About as well as you'd expect. She's also been removed from the school board and had to resign from her job at the real estate firm once the news got out. Turns out clients don't want to work with an agent who handcuffs federal officers. As I hung up, I couldn't help but feel a little sorry for Patricia. Then I remembered the 17 warning letters she'd sent me about my dandelions, and the sympathy passed. The last I heard, Patricia had moved to a rural property with no HOA and started a blog called Neighborhood Patriots Against Secret Government Sheds. It has 12 followers, mostly people sharing stories about their own HOA nightmares. She was sentenced to 2 years federal probation and ordered to pay $50,000 in fines. The judge delivered the sentence with barely concealed amusement, and Patricia fainted right there in the courtroom.